We had a deal. The deal was shook. A little handshake, all it took. Though from the deal, the wee child ran.
Yet still, we end as we began.
Hey all, Siege here today. Today I want to go over an aspect of Warframe that is maybe the most important, yet least understood part of Warframe's story, at least to this point.
You know what it gave. But what did you promise it in return?
What exactly did the Tenno agree to in exchange for the near limitless cosmic power they've been blessed, or is it cursed with? While the new war plainly confirmed what many of us had theorized for a while, what it did not do is explain the conditions of this bargain. The terms of the deal the Tenno made with the Indifference, this moment being referenced within the new war itself. I believe, after the Hex quest, we can finally make an educated guess on exactly what the Tenno was asked for in return. Not only that, we may have even been given some evidence that our operator is dangerously close to fulfilling their end of things. Figuring this specific bit of information out may finally offer the Tenno a bit of power in their own right, as it very much seems that the Void Entity, briefly referenced in the second dream,
This will stop the voices from taking hold. You will have to dream, my angel.
visualized in the War Within,
Hey kiddo, what took you so long?
and manifest during the Chains of Harrow.
Hey kiddo.
Works exclusively in, put bluntly, misdirection, and uncovering the truth of the matter may finally put the Tenno in a better position to negotiate. In fact, there may even be a loophole that can be exploited, but we'll get into the specifics of that later. Now, since his reintroduction to the Origin system, the Man on the Wall's actions have only gotten more elusive, cryptic, and downright menacing at times. But in the aftermath of the War Within, a pattern does seem to emerge in what very much appears to be a potentially very elaborate scheme to achieve what, in the end, I imagine he desires most: a way in. The operator is subjected to losing the Lotus to a shockingly alive Ballas, an Orokin, believed to have been dead for years during the Apostasy prologue. And then, he curiously makes just the briefest of appearances just after the events of the sacrifice transpire.
Feeling better, kiddo? I killed him. Isa. Did you now? Is that how you remember it? Yes. Good.
And then, in a kind of strange mimic of Apostasy titled Chimera, the Void then proceeds to potentially exploit the Tenno's recent anguish by donning a recreation of the Lotus's helmet and leads us through the same exact path, the same Orokin hall that revealed to us the location of the Lotus's chambers. This guidance continues underneath, putting the Tenno on a path directly to the area where we are led to believe Ballas is being held on a sentient ship somewhere, and the words he speaks don't appear to be in line with her recently saving his life.
No hope. Only suffering under her eye. But she gave me the gift of life. Why would I betray her? Fool. This is no gift. She stole my death. My perfect death. Such is her power over me. Over the devil. wanted, those devils and I. A lover. A mother. But now, I know. She is neither. She's a hawk calling with sparrow's song. A viper blending into wood. And her venom spreads not into flesh, but into your heart. Those devils, what has their great awakening accomplished but the destruction of potential allies? Don't they see? Love must die, as Margulis did when I sent her to the Jade Light. And the Lotus, just some cloud in the sky, just some shape they imagined. Only the Sentient is real. Only Natar. So, tell me, devil, do you understand what must be done?
Nonetheless, after the encounter, we are mysteriously sent back to our orbiter with knowledge of a very special weapon with the supposed properties necessary for the express purpose of putting our own Lotus down. If only we'd known the power it had over the Tenno as well, I wonder if we would have been so quick to take it. One of the many decisions it would seem we just can't take back. And the manipulation would only appear to grow to a titanic scale with what the Void offers us next.
Let her go.
If I had a heart, it would be broken. If my eyes could weep, I'd be blind. Look at what they've made of you. You're a god. You're a queen. But somehow the bees have you as a hostage. Do you even recognize me anymore?
I recognize the enemy.
No. Sister, it's me. Era. The Makers caught you, unraveled your mind. They're using you to kill us. The Queen of the Aphids, with her eye in the void. But I don't blame you. I blame them. You believe these are your children, but I am the only family you've got left. So choose our family, our people. Or these parasites. Choose, Natar! Choose!
I am not Natar. I am the Lotus.
This is clearly a repressed memory of some sort that Tenno had. Lost over time, perhaps, but is it really? An interesting theme of the rapidly approaching new war would be memory manipulation, so the truth of this scene does remain somewhat vague, but if taken at face value, a Tenno, our Tenno, outwardly puppeted by the Void itself amongst a group of black-eyed children, with a blazing red light emitting from the Lotus's helmet, piercing through the typically purple-hued aura she is usually seen with. And this relatively small group is seemingly in control of the area. Interestingly, this incident, given the first half of the scene's visual context being presumably at the tail end of the Old War, is presenting to us a relatively newly formed Lotus, now posing as the Tenno's mother instead of the sentient angel of death she was initially meant, dare I say, created to be, leading to Era, her brother's disturbed reaction to her dramatic and, amazingly enough, recent turn. What's worse, she now appears to him reformed into a visage of Ballas' former lover and recently murdered Archimedean Margulis. And Ballas' ability with Kuva, experience with continuity, and knowledge of the more, let's say, arcane methods of its usage, such as Warden Karras' transformation into our ship Cephalon Ortis.
I stare, drained of blood, of life, at those that remain. But I find no horror on their faces. Why? I let out a cruel howl and they laugh? Is this a dying hallucination? The sound of applause grows among them. I have killed the unkillable, and they are delighted. The applause peaks and fades. I feel a sense of shame, but the end is upon me. Ballas is above me, executor of the seven, smiling. He says, "How simple and pure you are, you idiot beast. We have died countless times, yet remain eternal. I close my eyes to die just once. And so the dream returns. One last repetition. My corpse moon, my scarlet sword, my cracked visor. Drink, says Ballas. So I draw on the red vial, a vague metallic taste. This dream isn't mine, he says. You rejected our gift, bathing in our death. Your punishment is eternal life. He laughs.
I am weightless. Years pass. I am a sightless, limbless phantom. Or is it seconds? Suddenly, I feel a million pins, an ant horde jittering across my body. I want to laugh and scream. When they reach my face, they burrow inside my mouth, hungry for the fruit in my skull. I see my reflection, brutal and ugly. It cracks, shatters. The fragments loosen the frame, pieces tumbling away into black void. Gone, but not lost. Ballas says, "You are Cephalon Ortis."
Well, this may explain how he was able to transfer her personality into the unwilling Sentient, based on dialogue from the Lotus fight.
Our history is smoke, blurred by dreams, guided by ghosts. A voice, a void, lurks inside you, its purpose not yet shown. But what am I? A mimic, a spy. Conceived to burrow into nests and swallow the pitch eggs of their war machine, the Tenno. But when I saw your tender faces, I took mercy. Or so we were told. But in truth, we were both imprisoned in Lua's belly. My light remade by the creators. I became a memory, a ghost. Reprogrammed to destroy my family, my people, my history.
Giving us the final pieces required to unearth the truth of her double agent role, originally revealed in the second dream, and expounded on further in the Vitruvian we accessed during the sacrifice.
Operator, I'd rather not connect that Vitruvian to my systems. It could
Make me crazy.
affect my systems in unforeseen ways.
This may have belonged to Ballas. He's our only way to the Lotus. Please, Ortis?
Ortis, you need to learn how to stand up for yourself. To say no and mean it, even if it is the operator's turn. Noted, Starchild. Your Warframe blueprint now has the required data. Check Foundry.
Something of note that a viewer picked up on is that after installing this device into the orbiter, it adds an odd yet familiar echo to Ortis's voice, removes his empathy, acting more cold, apathetic, dare I say indifferent towards the operator. And only after significant aspects of the deeper plot to overtake the Orokin from the inside are revealed is Ortis able, or perhaps allowed, to reinstall his caring precept, restoring his old voice and behavior.
Starchild, repairs continue. Allow me to test vestigial precepts for a moment, like caring.
Operator, you need to stop this. You could suffer permanent harm from Umbra's memory. What if you internalize all this?
The word Vitruvian essentially refers to the architectural style of Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, the inspiration for Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. And while the word itself doesn't have a specific meaning, this sure does. And I believe it's a relevant point, as what we are shown in the bowels of crumbling Lua, hundreds, potentially thousands of sleeping Tenno bodies, and the man in the wall's presence here at the end of the old war with 5 other Tenno that should by all rights be nestled within said pods. They were, after all, put in them to quiet the voices. Makes me believe the Lotus, first, really was a product of 2 selves. Her native sentient mentality, and a kind of injected persona of Margulis, making her desire to save the children over destroying them, her original intention, even more fierce given the aligned nature of Nata desperately desiring children of her own, as sentients lose their ability to procreate once they are exposed to the void. A failsafe the Orokin had originally administered to keep them in line, should they ever decide to revolt, and the already powerful bond Margulis had with these very same children becomes the defining characteristic of the Lotus in the end. But what we see during Era, the destruction of the Orokin towers on Lua, and perhaps the entirety of its collapse, noted by Alad V.
Yes, hurry, Tenno, but be careful. Last time you got close with the Sentients, you wiped out an entire civilization. But you don't remember that, do you?
Something the Tenno child still doesn't to this day remember. Might have to do with the fact that they really weren't there. Well, not in mind at least. In body, well, yes. And it may show us that the Lotus did have company, but of a very different sort than what we previously imagined. He was there. And whereas I've questioned the reason behind this helmet glistening a deep red hue countless times in the past, it never occurred to me that what this scene may be showing the operator, our operator, and by extension us, is that it wasn't the Tenno children who decimated the Orokin. I mean, it was their bodies, but unfortunately, the fact that our Tenno clearly here is the de facto leader of the group of hollow-looking Tenno, with a Lotus of dubious color and almost oblivious to her own brother standing right in front of her in the scene, well, now with everything we know, paints a very interesting picture and may prove what the man in the wall wanted from the Tenno specifically, and potentially by any means necessary, and that was to end the Orokin. All of them.
These gifts you have, a piece of me, given freely. But those before you were butchers, flayed flesh for stolen stars. They did not ask. They butchered me. My flesh fed their greed.
And this specific scene may be showing us it was the indifference kind of infecting the operator, as we've been shown, and laying dormant within, learning the ways of the Orokin. Dare I say, even winning the war with the Sentients for them, because he knew it was the only way to get an audience with them, the executors. Which of course he did. And what better manner of revenge than turning their own heroes against them. Lua, here at least, is falling apart. And being that this is the capital of the Orokin society, well, the fact that our twin is wearing the operator's body and roaming through destroyed halls, especially with the information Ballas offers us regarding his own defection and plot to undermine the very same group prior to this point, in tandem with what was recently revealed to us during the Hex quest, and I think we can finally see why it gave an Orokin child, especially one that would have maybe a hatred for the Orokin already with the failed void jump, the total abandonment by Executor Tuvol and of course the rest of the Orokin, and more than anything, losing their parents as feral monsters to the incident. Think about it. If you were in this situation and you were offered the ability, the true power to make right everything that had gone wrong, well, at least that's what you were told, would you offer your soul in exchange? Your light? It almost makes me wonder if the Void didn't have another agent as well. He seems to have so many, and this one might even be considered a kind of herald in ways. You'll see what I mean in a bit. With her admission during the Ropalolas fight regarding the interaction she's had with the wall, well, to me, taking in all the data regarding the behavior of the man on the wall, specifically the aforementioned information revealed on the Zariman during the Hex quest, the feasibility that the Tenno children unwillingly killed the Orokin, themselves controlled like the very warframes they habitually pilot, while clearly under the influence of the Indifference, becomes more and more difficult to dismiss. And as new information continues to be uncovered regarding the mind of a subdued warframe being almost non-existent in the messages we get in the KIM system, the emotions and common movements of each being the last vestiges remaining of the former person who was most likely forced into a transformation of horrific magnitude, one has to wonder if a similar almost unconscious state is as well experienced by the Tenno when they are also controlled, explaining their inability to remember such an incident, or maybe many of the incidents that they just seem to have trouble recollecting. Something the very next part of this incredibly important cinematic may even reinforce. Our Tenno is transported to a sentient ship, and after wiping the indifference from their eyes, is curiously shown the next phase of the very plan against them, with Ballas this time being shown as, in no uncertain terms, Era's pet, and further, he sells this weakness with delicious precision. And the Void has very much led us to side with Ballas, perhaps even attempting to impress a level of sympathy with the supposed goal to influence us into taking up arms against her, the Lotus. Something a large group of the community had in fact done at that point. Her actions of betrayal, they were not interested in having resolved. And it knew it could, because it tested the operator already.
Feeling better, kiddo? I killed him. Isa. Did you now? Is that how you remember it? Yes. Good.
I knew it would work. Remember? Before the new war officially begins, we are sent 2 messages. These, however, are a little bit different and appear to show a different side, redeeming the Lotus in the eyes of many. First, we are given new information in the Maker cinematic, where, as well as Nata beginning to question everything that's occurring, she herself is betrayed by Era, who is shown to be in league with Ballas from the start. And further, she relays to us another message, in secret, during Orphic's Venom.
Delta sequence A1. M2. Protocol in effect. We require sector control. Do not let them advance. All systems showing D3 degradation. Did not anticipate Necromex, but we will adapt. Adapt next series. Deploying from Y4 quadrant. We cannot be stopped. Deploying squadron I-05 to attack vectors. Do not let their old war relics interfere. Core Fix N6 series lost. Adjusting repeater deployment algorithm. Entrati interference must be cross-controlled. Segment G7 restarting.
And when the coded message is translated, it says, "I'm dying." This is the reassurance the operator needs to continue his search for her, which continues with a new war. And it's during this quest we learn of the truth of the Tenno's powers in the process, and that they were in fact a product of a deal. And from Ballas' perspective at least, a bargain with the devil.
I know we are desperate, Executor, but these aren't Dark soldiers. These are golems possessed by devil minds.
Faustian bargains, the original story depicting one Johann George Faust, don't tend to end well for those that make them. In this initial portrayal of the concept, this individual has seemingly all he could desire. Successful, intelligent, and wealthy, Faust became complacent and, for lack of a better term, bored with his history of achievement, feeling that he had come to the end of his own ambition, looking for something more to his life, and in the process offered himself to both the heavens above and the devil below for a method to break free of his humanly limitations. And who should answer but the latter, of course. And it presents the earthly scholar with the terms of the deal. He will allow Faust's usage of his own magical power for a set number of years, and when the term is over, the deal will in fact collect his very soul and send him into eternal damnation. In later iterations of the story, Faust is in fact redeemed by God and saved due to his desire to atone for his grievous acts of communing with the most unclean one, along with the heavy influence of prayer from a woman who comes to be intertwined with Faust through his own desires. His actions, birthing with her an illegitimate son, nearly destroy her, and yet she still pleads for his very soul, and God steps in to save him in this adaptation. The concept of Faust's plight has taken on many forms, in fact, over the years. The idea of bargaining with the devil for ultimate power is not new, and has been interpreted in a number of different ways. There's the true Faustian bargain, where the devil seems to make himself and his desires very plain. Works like the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus or Little Shop of Horrors even depict the protagonist taking immeasurable power, and in the end, ruining themselves and perhaps even the world. As the actual ending of Little Shop of Horrors in particular, the one we don't see in the theatrical version, portrays a planet overrun and destroyed by the very flytrap-looking supposed plants Seymour Krelborn, played by Rick Moranis, God, I miss that guy in movies, had been using to achieve all the things in his life he was unable to as a normal man. Success, the girl, it all came at the ultimate price. Was it worth it? Other iterations of this story, something like that of Ghost Rider, or even my personal favorite, Soul Reaver, where Raziel isn't even given a choice, rather saved and used as a vessel for the Elder God's plans for Nosgoth. Dare I say, in the end, the seeming ally of Raziel is very much compelled to be every bit the devil it appears as. And in the case of Johnny Blaze, a young boy is compelled into a deal with Mephisto due to the news of his father's deteriorating condition and certain death. What was a child to do in this instance? I only ask because of how similar that last depiction is in regard to our own operator's experience. And I think it's important to point out that in almost every iteration of this tale, the one making the deal rarely comes out of it unscathed, and in fact, most times, is forced into some form of eternal service, be it in hell, or many times above, doing the devil's bidding. And I bring all this up because that is largely what appears to be the dilemma of the Tenno, a child pressed aboard a colony ship, forced into an experimental jump into the void, with the aftermath turning their very parents and authority figures on the ship into feral monsters, literally hell-bent on finding and assumedly killing the ones who hadn't already succumbed. Fear would have completely overtaken most any child in this instance, but one Tenno in particular seemed to hold himself together better than the rest, and would appear the Void knew the target it wanted because, as we can see here, it's already chosen its avatar. For the deal, mind you. Do you find that weird? Like in Trotty, a deal apparently isn't necessary for a copy to be created. So from us, it clearly wanted more. I believe we can utilize the information we've been given over the entirety of the Warframe narrative to deduce the specifics of the deal. What the Man on the Wall shows us during the Hex Quest is unique. We get to hear, vocalized by the recently overtaken Major Rusalka for the first time, its pain. And pain is where deals of this magnitude come from. I think it's important to consider the Indifference may not have wanted to give this power so freely to a mere mortal, but felt inclined to present such a gift due to its own need. And I can't help but question if, unlike unknowingly welcoming a vampire into your home, did the operator unwillingly offer first?
Hey, lose your light? Here, you can take mine. Thanks, kiddo. I think I will.
This light is very much in line with new dialogue we are given. Oddly enough, in lyrics for tracks found within the Whispers in the Walls quest. And they're significant. Eternal service. Light out of the darkness. Behold us. The Master. Has the Master returned? Welcome, newcomer. We give freely of our many lights. This may indeed confirm the Indifference is looking for a particular kind of light from those it chooses to interact with. What exactly this light is has been highly speculated and to this day remains unknown, but it does solidify the concept that whatever it is, it's attracted to the Indifference. Is this in line with the theorized uniqueness Trotty had also speculated upon when trying to differentiate the method by which it would respond to his initial offerings? Although the lyrics themselves do share a fair bit of light on the matter of the Murmur and the Void entities, perhaps multitudes of different varieties, Thrax soldiers, or maybe even Void angels, as Teshin himself confirms in the Undercroft. But what else serves the Master? Or at least, what has the potential to, let's say, show up to us, asking for help, or maybe something much darker, but in, say, someone else's form? Well, as far as I can tell, potential doppelgangers, at least from definite interactions, are Albert and Trotty, Lloyd, the Kavia, Barreau Katir, Archimedean Yonta, our own Lotus, and even the Warframe Dante in his original sentient form, believed to at least not be associated at the time with a Tenno child. But if he was, well, that makes this story even more troubling. But we can also add Palladino, who to this day resides at Iron Wake, and Major Rusalka, of course. And that's just those we can definitively say only due to direct communication within the game itself, either appearing in text within the lore or during gameplay, but each stating quite plainly that they have made contact in some capacity. However, it also adds, in my opinion, a second tier of individuals who we can assume are just as perhaps likely to be able to be copied, like an undetected virus by touch or continued direct exposure. These individuals would include Entrati's daughter Euleria, as she does mention, if nothing else, seeing this entity and even going through the untimed door to find it. And in that regard, perhaps all of Entrati's family. How about the people of Diviri? There exists, even within those lands, an anomaly that does not mimic the appearance of the Drifter. Rather, it takes on the visage of those within the area, but darker, missing a finger and laughing uncontrollably when encountered. And that's not all. Akrathis tells us of a time regarding the aforementioned Hollow Children, themselves mischievous void copies of the citizenry that just disappeared one day when sensing the actions of Dominus Thrax.
There was a time when the children of Diviri were educated. Upon the island of Academe, within its chalky caves, in rough-hewn classrooms lit by burning blue gas, sages taught them everything they would need to know. They learned of the 7 principles, the geometries, The primords, the harmonics and resonances, the secret stories, and, most importantly, the unquestionable benignity of Dominus Thrax. And then, not long after the Reign of Chains, the first of the Hollow Children appeared. They joined the others for class, sitting at the back, silent and attentive. Their eyes were a deep and lustrous black, their mouths fixed in a constant grin. None of the sages saw them enter or leave. The Hollow Children did not speak, nor did they participate in class in any way, except to giggle unnervingly when the subject of the void was mentioned. When adults came to collect their children, they noticed an additional oddity. Among the Hollow Children were exact duplicates of themselves when they were younger. Each day, there were more of them. Thrax ordered the island destroyed, but when Loden descended from the sky to ravage it, the Oroworm found it had broken free of its own accord. Thrax did not give the order to pursue.
I often wonder how the new residents of that island, these black-eyed children, understood of what the Drifters' other had planned for that place before just vanishing into the Nether one fine day. Then, we have the Hex. The end of the ARG presented in the lead-up to Warframe 1999 was centered around gathering DNA sequences for each of the Hex members and putting them through a kind of filter, oddly reminiscent of a particular Requiem word, and Trotty had thankfully already transcribed for us. The word? Loke, and it means void. So, by translating their DNA sequences essentially to void and giving them directly to the Indifference, the ARG includes by allowing us to finally understand that in Trotty's eye symbol, which doesn't just appear in 1999 but also in the Sanctum, is in fact the Indifference. A name we've applied to something that the Requiem itself claims.
Loke. Void. From brooding gulfs are we beheld by that which bears no name.
And, in fact, gave meaning to the end of our supposed good ending, experienced after getting to know the Hex. Intimately, even in some ways. So, with direct access to those individuals now, the ones in Trotty claims are special and needed, while having already produced his supposed weapons against this adversary in the form of large warframes, with a clear connection of some sort to their progenitor, as that does appear to be what allows us to head to the past during Whispers in the Walls. It just seems like that last part of the Hex, as triumphant as we may have felt in the moment, isn't looking too good in hindsight. But think about how far-reaching this entity may already be. We don't know how it's coming into contact with certain people, but it's doing it all the same, and at some point may force us to ask what its true capabilities are. And if there are others we should be concerned about, like a virus spreading through everything. And it's for these reasons that I believe, on a long enough timeline, the Indifference offered us all that power for our soul, pure and simple. And it's the reason why the Lotus has mentioned that it wants the Tenno child back.
You, my child, the great Indifference wants to take. I want to let it. I feel only the call.
The deal is almost complete. The Orokin are so close to being completely removed from existence. All of them. In reality, most of the job was completed at the end of the old war. And with the Tenno being put back into cryosleep just after, no wonder the man on the wall could rest. At that point, Entrati was all that remained, especially given his family had lost their memories and Lloyd was essentially asleep. Aside from Nihil, who the Tenno have now taken care of, his essence stored as calmly as Orden Karis's within a Cephalon prison, glassed and well neutralized by all means, they are gone. Even the Orokin 7, according to Drusus, were destroyed in their entirety.
Impressive, isn't she? The relentless hunting shadow of the Knight of Naga Drums. The last thing many an Orokin lord ever saw. Varuna, she-wolf incarnadine. The heart of the pack. Hunter of god prey. We remember her as a primal horror. The pitiless devourer, stalking burning cities of white and gold, slavering for godflesh. This was not always so. Once, Varuna was the obedient guardian of the Circulus, the holiest of Yuvan temples, upon none other than veiled Lua. Like a loyal beast, Varuna would roam Lua with her 4 steel-maned wolves, the stealthy Dinar, invigorating Raksh, the stalwart Lycath, and the fierce Ulfron. But what they were sworn to guard was perverse, wrong. In a ceremony reeking of Kuva, the Orokin candidate would force their consciousness into the new chosen body, the Yuvan, consigning the mind of the hapless former owner to oblivion. They call this life-extending process continuity. Executor Tuval was one of the ruling 7 and head of the Yuvan clerisy, high-ranking officiators who enacted the hideous ritual, all of whom were now all dead, torn apart, all save for Tuval.
All of them. And given his position as a kind of records keeper, one would assume his information to be meticulous and incredibly reliable. Which leads me to an interesting ally to the Void I mentioned earlier. That makes a lot of sense if you really think about it. The Truth Requiem, a word we see used quite often in the game, has itself a curious bit of dialogue that accompanies it in the same manner the Loke Requiem does.
Its heralds are the stars it fells, the sky and earth aflame.
Now, the New War is essentially the culmination of all of Ballas' plans, and none of it would be possible without the help of the Indifference, as I believe I've already presented. But this alliance, along with the wording of the Requiem, the association with the Void Ballas would have had to have experienced, given his own worship of it, his knowledge of continuity, his clear interest in the arcane and forbidden knowledge, and more than anything else, a similar burning desire to destroy the Orokin due to them forcing him to execute the only person he ever loved, would make him, maybe more than anyone else, an easy target for a deal. Especially when we consider the lengths he allowed his vengeance to bring him to in the end. By betraying the entirety of his people, his empire, he was given a world completely devoid of the one thing he couldn't destroy, the Tenno, and was somehow able to keep the operator in some kind of void loop in the process. We never questioned during the quest how he would have this ability or any of the other things he's able to create. This Kuva-looking material, for instance, that clearly gives him the power to depict within those that wear his Narmer veils the world as he would like it to be, and is in this process somehow able to remove all Tenno from the origin system, according to the very words in the quest. That's a pretty incredible feat, not to mention the sheer dumb luck that the severed hand of the Lotus would just happen to land in Duviri and give the perfect entity the path he or she required to break free from their own self-imposed prison. It's really convenient timing and incredibly coincidental placement of such an important thing. Unless, of course, there is some level of, let's say, intelligent design behind it all. Also, how long until the Drifter actually showed up? This world, devoid of the Tenno, could really only be done with significant help, in my opinion. Well, perhaps this length of time we were absent was Ballas' allotted time. Another common trope of the Faustian bargain. Why does Ballas see Margulis here? The Narmer veils appear to show a kind of negative reality in almost every scene where they are portrayed in, depicting a world where the Tenno are the villains and Ballas is the benevolent leader who has delivered the origin system from their scourge. And to me, this substance may not necessarily show what Ballas wants the wearer to see, but rather what the void wants to show the wearer. Because while I'm not confirming this is 100% true, the idea that Ballas has himself been visited and, dare I say, made a wager of his own would explain large swaths of the new war that at this point are complete mysteries, especially in regards to the clear legitimate assistance the Void gives him, somehow enlisting our help specifically, as well as how he survived the collapse when thought dead for so long. Who knows how much of his knowledge truly comes from him or somewhere else. It's not the first time an Orokin has went from nothing to, well, one of the most important figures in Orokin history due to a deal. In the aftermath of this part, the man on the wall coming through the portal just after this scene, well, there's what I consider to this day to be a bit of a controversy. After watching this scene countless times, there are a few things that I need to point out for the purposes of this point. First, while I initially believed this scenario playing out becomes the catalyst for the Indifference direct involvement in our timeline, there were actually 2 portal openings. And perhaps it matters that only after the first opening do we see the man on the wall becoming involved in the quest intimately, showing us necessary things at the proper moment to bind the mind of the operator to the drifter, much like how it was done with Umbra's memories. Further, what would it make of the climax of the new war? What happened to the man on the wall in this moment? Clearly he wasn't pushed back or countered in any way. And the shield the Lotus constructs, is this against the pull of the portal? Or does it have something to do with the man on the wall's disappearance? Especially after she is hesitant to tell us the truth of what she saw during the epilogue. Well, it's just all too much of a coincidence. I cannot shake the feeling that this almost imperceptible smile at the very end will have much greater meaning at some point. I mentioned earlier regarding the Zata Requiem, and I can't help but see a similarity in the concept of the sun needing to be felled in order for Ballas to simply make it to Tau. After all, Yonta in particular feels pretty confident that she could make the jump if given another chance with the Zariman, and I have a hard time believing that vessel requires the power of a sun to function, so why destroy everything in the process? Vengeance against the Tenno? Certainly, I believe that's part of it, but what if this was the herald, the star it was attempting to fell, the sky and earth aflame? Much like what we see at the very end, was essentially the culmination of the deal for Ballas. And when his time was up, sent its agents to close the transaction. The Lotus and us. More and more, it's why I believe both of the entities at the end look so happy during this final exchange. We did exactly what it needed. So did she. And now it's here. I believe it's hard to argue that the Lotus's behavior after the new war is quite uncharacteristic of what we see from her up to that point at least. With her almost vanishing from every quest until the ill-fated Lotus Eaters, where we are then shown potentially the truth of the matter. That our time, at least for our operator, may be up as well. After all, as I mentioned, there's really only one Orokin left, given that Lloyd has already been compromised from what we see in WARFRAME 1999. And given what happens in the second end of said quest, can we now expect the Hex to be any different? Unfortunately, it seems more and more that there's really only one ending that will satisfy the Indifference. And in order to survive, we're going to need a miracle. But as the man said, miracles require sacrifice. And that will undoubtedly be our operator. Unless, of course, we can figure out that third option, the edge of the coin. And it may in fact exist. Deals with the devil are very specific, as well they should be, especially when one's soul is in play. And it's in this that I believe we may have a chance. In the initial deal with the man on the wall, he specifically says,
"Time's up, kiddo. I can save them. All of them. But you have to want it. Let's say we shake on it."
I can save them. All of them. And this is unfortunately followed up with a datapad in Duviri that does in fact expound on the desired fate of the Tenno a bit further, confirming yes, their survival is not a condition of the deal. However, the parents, well, they did die. In fact, we are led to believe every adult on the ship was lost. So unless we are yet to receive that part of the bargain, the man on the wall has not kept his end. And it may be an important bargaining chip, as it's becoming clearer and clearer that the walls are closing in on us, and time may be shorter than we think. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I gotta know, if you had to sacrifice your operator child to save the universe, universes, timelines, conceptually embodied realities, would you do it? Another commenter in stream made mention of something else. Given that Kuva is necessary for continuity, and the man on the wall too wants to end as he began, do you think the decision you made in the War Within may have already prepped your operator for assimilation into the wall, or worse, to become its own paradoxical vessel? The dialogue we receive at the end of the quest, depending on the choice we make of destroying, controlling, or consuming, in my opinion, very much falls in line with this method of thinking. So, did you drink it? At any rate, I hope you all have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk at you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.